What's your caught in a NSFW situation at work? At my last job, there was this deaf guy who was non-verbal. The company brought in an ASL translator for every meeting, which was the only time you could really interact with him face to face. Honestly, a stand-up guy though. One day I'm in the washroom taking a dump, and I hear something strange in the stall next to me. The steady schlick 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 of someone jerking off. Then some grunting. So I finished up quick and left the washroom. It was just me and the masturbator in there. I checked his shoes, then stood outside and pretended to be on the phone. Turns out it was the deaf guy. I just smiled and waved when I saw him. From then on, I noticed that he went to the washroom for a suspiciously long time every day. I guess nobody told him that masturbating makes noise. My old married, wife and kids, boss had a ton of nudes on the work computer of mostly other women and occasionally himself. They were labeled mundane things like Maloney job site. Somehow he synced his personal email to the work one and I discovered he was picking up men on Craigslist. Email subject lines like "suck my cock daddy" are hard to ignore. He was such a miserable, nasty, explosively angry person and went viral for a funny house selling video. Only got caught peripherally in this one. One of my IT guys assigned to one of our regional offices kept getting help requests from one clerical, and most of the problems were questionable at best. She obviously just wanted to see him. One day he gets a call and goes up to her cubicle and she's standing there with her pants off. He backed out of that, put her on his do not respond list until things could get straightened out, and then called me for help since nothing he had done was working. Since she wasn't my employee, I picked up the phone and called the regional director. The initial contact was something like, "Hi, regional, first name basis, you know, I've always supported casual Fridays, but don't you think no pants Fridays are a little too much?" Back in the early 2000s there was a NSFW prank floating around the internet. If you clicked it, a looping video of two guys going at it popped up on your screen and the PC speaker squawked, "Hey everybody, I'm watching gay porn." That wasn't the worst of it. If you tried to close the browser it spawned two more and kept spawning more if you closed those. I worked in IT and thought it was a hilarious prank, so I sent it to my supervisor in an email titled, "Important System Update." We always played practical jokes on each other and this would have just been par for the course. Only problem is he thought it was legit and sent it to the whole floor. My horror when only a few moments later I hear it playing on one PC, then another. Almost everyone in the office had clicked the link. People panicked, turned off their systems, losing all their work. It was a huge shit show. Believe it or not, I never got fired and actually got promoted a year later. I don't know if this counts. But I worked for a call center a couple years ago, and when we asked someone their name we had to say, "And who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today?" Well, for some fucking reason why. I have no idea. I asked the lady on the phone, "And who do I have the pleasure of sleeping with today?" The girl who sits next to me looked at me wide-eyed and then I realized what I said and apologized profusely. The lady on the phone just started cracking up and then told me her name was Marie. I work nights in the reception at a small hotel. Once this older guy came down with his laptop and requested help because he couldn't make his porn work. So I had to update the guy's flash player to make his Filipino porn work. It was a bit awkward, but I'm not gonna deny some old guy his porn. So I fixed his computer and the dude was happy. My old boss, who is married, has several kids, and lives a relatively successful life, used to have a shed that had an attic that was always locked. One day I was getting some fertilizer and mulch out of the shed and I noticed the attic door was propped open. My boss was off the property and I decided to sneak inside to take a peek. The moment I walked up the stairs there were two massive piles of plywood that had cutouts of nudes from Playboys and collaged together to make a giant 5x20 porn wall. A little further down he had like two magazine racks with literally hundreds of Playboys and an entire cabinet filled with VHS tapes and DVDs. Like it was his Jack Shack or something. A little over a decade ago, I was working as a quality assurance tester at Sony. Rather than slogging my way through unfinished video games, though, I was tasked with watching movies that had been released on Blu-ray, making sure that all of their various features functioned as expected when accessed on the PlayStation 3. While that might sound like an amazing job, it was actually less enjoyable than you'd think. Both because I didn't get to choose what I watched, and because I'd have to endure repeated viewings for every subtitle track, alternate cut, and ill-conceived piece of commentary that was included on the discs. One day, I was assigned the movie Eyes Wide Shut. If you're unfamiliar with the film, here's what you need to know. Stanley Kubrick was, and still is, famed as being one of the most driven and detail-oriented directors to grace the silver screen. If anyone else had made Eyes Wide Shut, though, critics likely would have decried it as a filmmaker's excuse to surround themselves with dozens of naked women. There's a scene, for example, that's literally just Tom Cruise walking through a graphic orgy. Each person involved is wearing a mask, but nothing else. Anyway, as with any of the films that I was assigned, I had to watch this 1.5 times, at the very least. And given that my desk wasn't the most private of locations, my screen was completely visible to anyone who might happen to pass by. Word quickly got around that I was watching pornography, which prompted my supervisor to approach me from behind. "Max, what are you doing?" he asked. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, but held up the movie's case. "It's Eyes Wide Shut." "Oh." He stood there for a little while, staring, until the manager walked over. "What are you guys watching?" "Eyes Wide Shut," we both said. "Oh." Over the course of about 10 minutes, my desk was slowly surrounded by the entire management team, up to and including the department head. When the orgy scene finally finished, they all glanced around at each other, chuckled, then hurried off to focus on whatever work they had been neglecting. It was something of a relief for me, and not as you might be thinking because I didn't like having my superiors crowd around me, but because I had been seated with my head at crotch level for the entire showing. Like I said, I kept my eyes glued to the screen. Used to be a lifeguard and decided to take a break to walk the dog in the bathroom. Only had some family bathrooms, not really any men or women designated areas. So I sit down and whip out the all-mobile device and start yucky the chain. When all of a sudden the door begins to open up and a younger dad who doesn't know how to knock, my fault I didn't lock it, decides that he is gonna walk right in. He then looks at me as I've got my dick in one hand and my phone in the other and turns to his wife, who couldn't see me, and says, "Let's not use this one, it's pretty dirty." He backed out and closed the door. I have never felt so relieved but so traumatized and a little mad. Mostly because he called me dirty. A little bit of backstory on this one: I have a porn album on my phone. I'm not obsessed with it or anything, but sometimes the wifey goes out and I still wanna get my nut off. The cover image for the album is a completely blank screen and the title is pornography. Seriously, dude, don't click on this. I figured that title and the lack of a cover image would be enough to sate the curiosity of anyone snooping on my phone so they wouldn't click on it. Now that you know this, into the story. So I was showing a co-worker some pictures of a sunrise or something else cool I saw that morning, and he takes my phone to scroll through them. Then, when he gets to the end of them, he exits the album and starts looking at my other photos. At this point, I'm getting pretty nervous, but basically freeze up and don't know what to even say. I try to ask him to give me my phone back, but I can't even manage to choke out any words anymore. He looks through a couple of albums of relatively innocent stuff before seeing my good old porn album. I'm embarrassed at this point, but I figure he'll just awkwardly give me back my phone and we'll pretend this never happened. Right. Wrong. I don't know the logic behind this, but he clicks on it, and in the split second before it loaded, his face had the look of "oh god, I just majorly fucked up" all over it. Right as he clicks, I manage to say "wait Don" before he sees around 10 or 15 images that I don't want to describe in detail. I snatched my phone from him and nervously said sorry, and took a bathroom break to catch my breath and get away from him. When I got back, he looked at me differently, but he didn't say anything about it and we pretended it never happened.